Hey, Scott Spears back with you on another edition of the Spears Report. Hope you enjoyed last night's report, but I've come back inside. It's raining tonight on this Thursday evening, so I'm glad to be back indoors, as they say. I'm going to get right into tonight's blog very quickly because it's probably the question I've been asked more than any. Probably the biggest interview I ever did, probably the biggest interview I will ever do, was with former Dean of the White House Press Corps, Helen Thomas. People say, how'd you get Helen Thomas? I mean, I ended up on CNN, I ended up on the O'Reilly Factor on Fox News, I was in 450 newspapers all across the country and in Israel. It was a bizarre time, but here's how it happened. How'd you get Helen Thomas? I don't think I've ever told the story on camera anywhere, so here we go. It'll be down in the books now forever. Here's how it started. Helen, of course, got involved, funny enough, through internet. Rabbi David Nezanoff, after something at the White House in May of 2010, pulled out a camera, asked Helen what she thought about... I don't remember the exact words, so I don't want to quote it. You can find it on the net. If you search Helen Thomas, Rabbi David Nezanoff, you can see the whole incident. But in any event, what essentially happened was Helen told people, the Israelis, that's the term I couldn't think of, the Israelis to get out of Palestine and eventually led to her retirement. Because this video went viral on the net that Rabbi David Nezanoff shot, and there you go. Everybody has an opinion on that. I'm not going to weigh in with my opinion because that's not what this is about. This is about how I got Helen to talk to me before she talked to anybody else. What happened was I saw this on CNN on a Sunday night. I saw the full video and immediately I wanted to do something on it. I tried to get in touch with Helen, who I had interviewed before, and she, of course, was not accepting any interviews at that time. So I called up Rabbi David Nezanoff, oddly enough, and I did get a hold of him that night. He called me back rather quickly, and I actually went to the radio station, WMRN. I was working with and for at the time at like 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. It was very late, I remember, and I did a phone interview with Rabbi Nezanoff, and it was a long interview, and we kind of bantered. I was not totally sure why he did what he did, why he turned this video over to the press, why he was not trying to defend Helen. I really don't know. Not that she needed defending, but here's why David Nezanoff and I did not get along. David Nezanoff in that interview, and once again I can't quote it directly because I really haven't heard it since we did it, which has been over a year ago now. Rabbi Nezanoff said something about he was a rabbi of forgiveness. And I thought him not coming out and forgiving Helen was kind of backwards. I didn't like it, and I argued that point with him on the radio. Anyway, interview aired the next morning, and I remember a few people commenting to me that, boy, you really didn't like him, did you? And I don't know that I disliked him, but I disliked what he was doing and what the press was doing to Helen. Anyway, the next day Helen resigns. And of course I'm calling her, trying to get an interview like everybody else is, and she didn't answer the phone for a long time for anybody. I think she was kind of in hiding. Matter of fact, she ended up telling me later on she did stay in hiding for quite a while after this. By the way, the reason I had her number, because this has come up also, the reason I had her number is I'd had her on my radio show probably 5 or 6 times via telephone in the history of my radio show. And sometimes when you're doing an early morning radio show, which is what I was always doing, 6 to 9 a.m. East Coast time, you ended up calling people at their house when you do an interview with them because it's before they get to the office at 9 o'clock. So anyway, that's how I had Helen's number, because I'd done several interviews with her over the years. Tried to call her, always got the answering machine, never answered the phone. Well, about a month passed, and she hadn't spoken to anybody, so I thought, I'm going to try her again. And she never returned any phone calls. So the beginning of July, now this is a month after her retirement, around 4th of July, I remember, I called her, and she answered. She answered, my goodness. And I said, how are you, Helen? And we talked a few minutes, and it was a private conversation off the record, so I'm not going to talk about what we talked about, but at the end I said, Helen, would you mind doing an interview? No, I don't want to do an interview. Okay, do you mind if I check back with you? No, I don't mind. Click, and we were done. In August of 2010, Helen turned 90 years old, so I thought that would be a good time to do an interview. I called her again. I said, Helen, would you mind doing an interview? No, don't want to do an interview. Okay. Beginning of September, same thing. Helen, how are you? Do you want to do an interview? No, I don't, Scott, but thank you for calling. Beginning of October, I called. Remember, it was right at the beginning of October 2010. And I said, Helen, this time I actually came with a case, because now she hasn't spoken to anybody in 4 months. And it's really become a big story, because what's she going to say when she finally speaks? And I called her up. I said, Helen, instead of just asking, I said, Helen, listen. I said, people want to know why you did what you did, and people want to know what you're doing or where you've been. And to my amazement, she goes, you're right. Can you be here in a week? And I thought, what? Did I hear you right? She said, no, I'll do the interview. Can you come to Washington to do it? And of course, I was not going to do this over the phone. It was way too important for that. I live in Ohio. She lives in Washington. I hadn't planned the trip, but I was in a car and I was gone. You know, that's just in your blood as a reporter, I think. Took a friend with me, relative, Sean Kraft, who also went on short notice, but that's nor here nor there. In any event, went to Washington, went to Helen's apartment. Very strange situation. Kept it secret from everybody. Didn't tell anybody that I was doing this. Had no idea why I was going to Washington. And when I came into Washington on a Monday night, and I met with Helen, and we set up to do the interview Tuesday, because I wanted to meet with her first. I wanted to kind of get a feel for how she was and so on and so forth, and I did, and she was a very polite lady. Next day I came back and we did the interview. Now that's the interview everybody remembers, of course, and it's the only time I've ever heard Helen Thomas cry, to be honest with you. I don't think you're ever going to find an interview where Helen cried, except the interview I did. We did it in her house. We did it at her kitchen table. Like I'm sitting to the computer right now. This is how I did it with Helen Thomas. And by the way, this was a picture taken the day that I did the interview. Of course, you can see that is Helen and I on her sofa in her apartment in Washington, D.C. Got the tape, drove back. Whole time nervous because she didn't take it back. To be frank, what she had said, she was not taking back. You know, that was not her style. I was nervous how it was going to be played. We waited a week. I did it on Tuesday, and we held it for a week, and we played it the following Tuesday. I went into the radio station that morning when it was played to listen to it live over the air, and then the AP picked up, and it was from Israel to O'Reilly to CNN. The biggest occurrence I'll ever have in my life in broadcasting. It was a magical thing. And you can't know people calling you and you seeing yourself on CNN, hearing your voice coming out of the television on the O'Reilly Factor. It was amazing. I'll never top that. There'll be no way. And I'll be in Helen Thomas's debt forever because of that. I mean, she did not have to grant me the interview, and she did. And I'll tell you a little side note. This is, you'll learn something here. When I was done interviewing Helen, and she had cried during the interview or gotten emotional, I don't know how you describe that. She fed me egg sandwiches and ginger ale, and we sat around and talked for probably a good half hour after the interview. It's a magical moment. It's a magical moment in my career, and I'll never forget it, but that's how I got the interview. Now, the sidebar to all this is I got nominated for an AP award, an Associated Press award. I never thought I'd be a finalist, and I certainly never thought I'd win, because here I am from little Podunk, Marion, Ohio, reporter, never went to journalism school, never was on a big network, never was on a big anything. How the heck could I, forget heck, I'm on the internet. How the hell could I win an AP award from the Associated Press? That's nuts. Especially for broadcasting, because nobody in the 70 years of WMRN had ever won a broadcasting award. And we had a lot of great broadcasters at WMRN. Joe Ione, Charlie Evers, Madge Cooper. A lot of great people. My God, Rod Serling worked there for a while. But, as they say, the cookie crumbles, and there it is. And I honest to God, I don't show you this to brag. I show you this because I am totally as amazed as you are that I have this. How does the kid from Marion, Ohio, like I said, who never took a journalism class, win an AP award, something people in their careers who went to journalism school never win? How the hell does that happen? Well, it happened. And that's how it happened, and I am forever in Helen Thomas's debt. I will never forget her or anything about her, and think what you may about her. We're all about opinions, but she did well by me, and I hope I did that well by her. And for the kid from Marion, it was the most amazing experience in my professional life that I think I'll ever have. I don't know if anything will ever be bigger. Hope you've enjoyed this blog. It's one of the longest ones I've done, but I had a lot of information to share. And I will always be indebted to this woman, Dean of the White House Press Corps, Helen Thomas.